welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and today we are going to be doing my favorite books of 2023. So this video is always so difficult for me to film. I don't know why, but I have this problem where I'll look at my books and I'll be like, ooh, is that really a favorite? I'll like second guess how much I loved them, especially ones that it's been a long time since I read them. But I finally narrowed it down. I'm sticking with what I've got, and I truly, truly loved all of these books. And the ones that I ended up choosing were ones that made me feel so strongly while I was reading them. They are ones that I had a visceral emotional reaction to, that I just had so much emotions while I was reading these books that I had to put them on this list. I ended up narrowing it down to 10, and then I have 3 honorable mentions, and I will be doing another video of ones that I also love that didn't quite make my top 10, so that'll be coming next week, I think. And I am just really excited to talk about all of these books. They are not in any order. I am just not somebody who's going to be able to do that and like get to like actually numbered them in order of which one I like better. It just depends on the day of how I'm feeling, but these are all favorite books, all ones that I love with my whole heart. So I'm going to get into them. I am going to do the honorable mentions first, and then we'll get into the 10 books that are actually my favorites. So for honorable mentions, like I said, I have 3 of them. The first one that I have is Losers Part 2 by Harley LaRue. This is one that I read in December, and I have just not stopped thinking about it at all. Specifically, we're talking about Part 2, but the duet has to be read in order, and I would highly recommend reading The Dare beforehand. But I gave The Dare and I gave Losers Part 1 4 stars, but Losers Part 2, the culmination of their relationship is fabulous. If you don't know, this duet is about a heroine who has bullied these 5 guys throughout high school. She was like the it girl, and she was the super popular one, and she bullied these 5 freaks, or losers as she called them. And now it's years later when the first book takes place. It's I think 4 or 5 years later. They're out of high school, out of college, they're adults now, and the losers, or part of them, a couple of them, own a mechanic shop. And when the heroine's car breaks down, she ends up putting this deal with the losers where she will repay her debt with them fixing her car with sexual favors, basically. And the first part of this duet, it's very sexual. It's very sex focused. It's very much them having an attraction to each other. And this is a Why Choose Romance with content, so all of them are together with everyone. And Part 2 of this duet is where the emotions come in. It's where the love comes in, and the actual development of their relationship, of a relationship with all of these people together, was so well done. I loved their development, and I loved how much every single one of them loved each other so equally, and their relationship was just so beautiful, and I loved it so much, and it almost made my top 10. The next one that is an honorable mention is Choosing Theo by Victoria Aveline. This is an alien romance about a heroine who gets kidnapped from Earth by these aliens. They're like the bad aliens. And then she ends up escaping from them on this planet, and when she runs into what I'm going to call the good aliens, the aliens that actually live on this planet, she finds out that she is unable to go home because part of their law is that when another being shows up on their planet, they have to stay there for a year in order for the 2 cultures to learn from each other. And she has to partake in the culture and traditions of the aliens on this planet, and that means that she has to get married. And so she ends up being put into this situation where men parade in front of her and she gets to choose which one she wants to marry. The women on this planet are revered. There are not as many women as there are men, and so the women are revered. The heroine ends up choosing Theo, who is this guy who is considered ugly on their planet. And he thinks that she chose him for nefarious reasons. He's kind of a spy, and so he thinks that she is also a spy, and he tries to figure out why she chose him, but she actually was attracted to him. She thought that he had tattoos, but they're actually scars, and so what they consider ugly on their planet, she considers beautiful, and so she chooses him, and they have an amazing romance. And I just loved this so much. I was so connected to this romance, and I was like swooning while I was reading it. I thought it was so sweet, so beautiful, and I am a huge fan of it, and I really loved it. This one, like, seriously almost made this top 10. Then my final honorable mention is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I am sure I don't have to explain this too much. Many people read this year. It is so incredibly popular, but I emotionally connected to this book so much. I read this twice this year. I read it in August, I believe, or July, and then I reread it right before Iron Flame came out, and I didn't love Iron Flame. I gave it 3.5 stars. That is not in any way connected to this book. We are talking just about this first book, Fourth Wing. And I loved this so much. It is about a girl named Violet who is ended up being forced into the Rider's Quadrant, which is the soldier quadrant, and she has to fight and work her absolute ass off in order to stay alive in this quadrant. And Violet has a chronic illness where she has joint problems, and I related to her so much. I am filming this with a brace on my knee because my knee is such a mess and it's so loose, and I worry every single day that I'm going to dislocate it again. And just having Violet talk about that and having to wrap her joints and have to work so hard and constantly be in pain. She works twice as hard as everyone else because of that, and she is such a badass, and I love her so much, and I love her romance with Xaden in this book. I really like the way that it develops. It was such a good fantasy romance, and it is not a book that I would recommend to super fantasy lovers. My brother is a huge fantasy lover, and he asked if he should read this, and I said no, I don't think that he would like it. But if you're a romance reader who is interested in trying a fantasy, read this book. It has the fantasy element, but it's not like a hugely developed fantasy. It's just great for what it is, and as somebody who emotionally connected to it, I loved it, and I really stand by it. Okay, that is it for honorable mentions. So now we are going to get into the actual top 10, my favorite books of the year. Like I said, these are not in any order. I'm just gonna grab them as I have them stacked over here, and I actually think I'm gonna start with some of the ones that I don't own physically. I really wanted to have all of them physically before I filmed this video, but it just doesn't work out. Some of these books are very expensive. And some of them are out of print, so I can't have a copy of them, or I want the like new cover that's like not out yet. Anyway, we're gonna get right into it. So number 10 that I have is Brutal Vows by J.T. Geisinger. This book, I am so confused. It went out of print like randomly. I went to go buy it one day and it just wasn't there, and so I guess she got picked up by a publisher but just didn't announce it until the books were already out of print. So unfortunately I will not have the cover that matches my previous one in the series, but this book is so fucking good. This is a Mafia romance. It is book 4 in the Queens and Monsters series, and I actually did not like book 1 in this series, and book 2 was just okay for me. Book 3 was on my top 22 of 2022, so this book, book 4, is actually my favorite in the series, which means I liked it even more than Savage Hearts, which was on my favorite books of last year. And this one is a Mafia romance, and it is about Spider and Reina. And Spider, basically, he is the second in command to the Mafia leader. I believe he's Irish, so Irish Mafia, and he tells his Dawn that he wants to get married. He's like, you can assign me a marriage, you can arrange me a marriage, and he gets arranged to marry this girl who is the daughter of the head of the Italian Mafia. But that girl who he's arranged to marry is 18 years old. She does not want to marry him. He is much older than her. She's in love with somebody else, and she does not want to marry him at all. And so she goes to her Aunt Raina, who is like this absolute badass, and the girl asks her Aunt Raina, is like, can you please stop this? Can you help me? And Raina is like, you will not be marrying him. And Raina and Spider end up being so much better matched than Spider and this 18-year-old girl. And he shows up at the Italian Dawn's house and he meets Raina, and Raina is this absolute badass. Like I said, she is just so freaking cool. She is the sister of the head of the Italian Mafia. She has previously been married, and it's rumored that she killed her husband. Raina has been through some serious shit. She is always just willing to stand up for her niece, willing to stand up for herself. She understands her place in the Italian Mafia, but also is always going to fight back. And I just loved her so, so much. I love a badass heroine so much. I loved their romance, and Spider and Raina were just so freaking good together. And I'm serious, if you like mafia romances, I would highly, highly recommend this book, and I would highly recommend the audiobook because Spider does have an accent, and the Irish accent is beautiful. I read this all the way back in, I think, January, so it's been so long since I read it, and I actually need to reread it, but it has stuck with me since January when I read it. It's now been a year since I read it, and I still love it so much. It had to go on this list, and I'm obsessed with this. The next one that I have is Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. This is one that I did not buy the cover in time, and so I have Next to You and I have Out on a Limb in this cover pattern, but I don't have this one, so if you have it and you don't want it, let me know and I'll buy it from you. But I loved this book so much. This one is about a girl. She has had a really rough life. She was in foster care. Her mother is an alcoholic and an addict, and she has basically been on her own for a long time. And she gets a call one day that her mother had a baby, and the mother is unable to take care of this baby, and the baby is going to go into foster care unless the heroine takes custody of her sister. And the heroine is unable to let her sister experience the life that she had in the foster system, and so she ends up taking custody, or attempting to take custody, of her infant sister. And in order for her to take custody and fulfill the guidelines set out by CPS, she ends up participating in this program called Team Up, which is basically when two people are trying to take custody of somebody from CPS and they are both missing one thing in the guidelines required for them to take custody, and so they team up and live together in order for both of them to be able to get custody of whoever they're trying to get custody of. And so the heroine ends up getting teamed up with this guy who's also trying to get custody of his sibling. His sibling is a teenager. He's like 13 maybe, and he also is deaf. And so he does not want his brother in a foster home where they can't talk to him. And so the two of them team up, they move in together, and the hero is like, we're not partners, we just live together, we're roommates, I'll take care of my brother, you take care of your sister, and we don't need to interact. And that's how he is in the beginning, until they get so much closer. They develop this amazing found family, and they fall in love, and they become this amazing little family, and it is so good. It is the kind of romance that I would recommend to a non-romance reader. It is something that I really think is so widely accepted by so many people. I really want my mom to read this book. I think she would absolutely love it, and I just loved reading this romance. I read it in one sitting. I just could not stop listening to the audiobook, and it was just, I literally was like almost to tears at certain parts where I was just like, this is so beautiful. I just loved it so, so much, and it's one that I definitely emotionally connected with, and I loved it so much. The next one that I have is Shadows of You by Catherine Cowles. I love Catherine Cowles so much, but this one blew all of her other books out of the water for me. I loved this one. I knew from the previous books in this series that I was gonna like Roan. He was just explained as the kind of hero that I love. The quiet, broody, away from everyone else kind of hero, and those are the ones that I tend to love. And so when I got to this book and I read it, I was so happy with it. It's so freaking good. This is about Aspen, who is a single mother, and she is on the run. She is in hiding from this bad man, and she doesn't really want to get close to anyone because she doesn't want to let anyone know the secrets that she's hiding. She ends up living in this small town, and she protects animals. Like, she takes in injured animals and tries to like raise them back to health. And when she finds an injured deer on her property one day, she ends up calling like wildlife services, and Roan shows up. He works for wildlife services, and they form this beautiful connection. They are both incredibly damaged by their pasts. Roan was a suspect in a murder that happened, and it turned his town against him, and they both understand what it's like to have people that they thought were their friends turn against them, and it is so beautiful. The heroine, Aspen, is a single mom, and so her daughter and Roan's relationship is so sweet, and I love having a child like this one in a book, because Roan, who is thought of as this really dangerous, really big, really intimidating guy, the daughter accepts him wholeheartedly. And I love the way that children just have these amazing instincts when it comes to people, and the daughter is so accepting of Roan and like trusts him immediately, and it's so sweet. I love the way their family develops. I love the way that Aspen is welcomed into, I think it's the Hartley family, and it was just so freaking good, and I love Catherine so much, and this book is definitely my favorite of hers now. The next one that I have is Dom by S.J. Tilley. This book I became obsessed with. I read this series at the perfect time. This book is a mafia romance with a plus-sized heroine, and I was feeling so bad about myself. I had serious body image issues this year, and I was really struggling. And I was so sick of reading books about heroines with their flat stomachs and their tiny legs and their petiteness, and I was so sick of it. I was so sick of it. And so I went on a hunt for plus-size heroines, and I read a ton of books featuring plus-size heroines, and it made me feel so much better. But the way that S.J. Tilley writes her heroines and writes her heroes who are so obsessed with their heroines made me feel better than anything else. Anything else. I loved the way these books made me feel, and this one is my favorite of her books, and it had to be on this list because of the way that it made me feel and because of the relationship in this one. This one is about Dom, and he is the head of the Italian Mafia, and he desperately wants to be part of the Alliance. The Alliance is this organization, mafia organization, run by these two people, and Dom needs help, and he wants the Alliance's help, and so he wants to join it. And in order to join it, in desperation, he ends up tricking one of the heads of the Alliance, King. He tricks King's sister into marrying him in order to become part of the Alliance. Valentine is the heroine, and she just wants to be loved. She has had a difficult past, and she just wants to be loved. And when she meets Dom, she thinks it's by chance. She falls really hard for him and is devastated when she finds out that Dom was tricking her. But Dom had this huge plan. He was so set and he knew what he was doing, and Val just came in and disrupted all his plans. He did not plan on falling for her, and he falls so hard for her. He becomes so possessive of her, and I loved this so much. It was so great. It's definitely like an unhinged Mafia, but I love the possessive hero aspect. I love the plus size heroines, and I was so giddy reading this book. It was just like, I was just obsessed with the way that the hero falls for the heroine, and it had to end up on this list. I love it so much. The next one that I have is one that I read in December, and that is God of Fury by Rena Kent. I binged this entire series in a reading vlog, actually, so I'll link that reading vlog down below if you haven't seen it, but I read this entire series in like a week, and I loved the whole series. It is a dark, unhinged, psychopathic hero series, but none of them made me feel as strongly as this book did. This book is the reason why I wanted to start the series. It is an MM romance between Nikolai and Brandon. Nikolai is the heir to a mafia. He is, I think, the Russian mafia. And Brandon is this sweetheart hero who is really seriously damaged. He is the twin brother of a psychopath who Nikolai also hates. And Brandon has really serious trauma in his past, and his reaction, his coping method for this trauma that he suffered is to become kind of OCD. He becomes very pattern oriented, he has a routine and he sticks to it, and he becomes very set in control. Nikolai has the entire opposite. He does not have control. He has kind of like manic episodes where he ends up seriously out of control, and the two of them and their relationship is so sweet, and they really calm each other. There are some issues when it comes in because Brandon is not like out gay, and so he is really like, they hide each other, and Nikolai wants their relationship to be out in the open, but Brandon is so afraid of what his brother will think, what his family will think, how it'll affect his routines and the way that he's held himself together. But I loved this romance so much. It definitely is dark. It has dark themes, but it's so good, and I would highly recommend the audiobook. And I just really love the way that these two connected. I love the way that I felt reading this book, and I love this series now, and I would highly recommend this book. The next one that I have is another one that I don't own, unfortunately, not yet, but that is the Mindfuck series by St. Abby. I am counting this as one. This is one. I read these back to back, and they're all novella length, and the bind up is the one that I'm gonna buy, and that's one book. So we're counting it as one book because this is my video and my rules. And this romance is about a heroine who is a serial killer, and she kills men who have wronged her. And she has a romance with the FBI agent in charge of her case. And she didn't mean to meet this FBI agent. She didn't mean to fall in love with him, but they do, and I love their romance, and I love the heroine, whose name is Lana. She has seriously been wronged, like seriously been wronged, and she is taking revenge on the people who have wronged her, specifically the men, and I love that. I am a huge supporter of her revenge. I am a huge supporter of the fact that these men need to get their comeuppance. I support her entirely. Like, murder is bad, but like what those men did is worse in my eyes. And seriously, this book is dark. It's seriously dark. What happened to her is horrible, but the romance is amazing. Lana is a badass, and to actually be able to coherently exist and form this revenge plan after what she's been through is insane. She is amazing. And her relationship with the hero is so good. I love the way that the hero supports her. It was so good, and I would highly recommend this book series. It's technically a series, but it's so good, and the minute after I read it, I knew it was gonna end up on this list because It's just that good. The next one that I have is a Laura Pavlov, and that is Under the Stars. I loved this book so much. This was actually my first Laura Pavlov book, and you guys know that Laura Pavlov was my #1 author this year. I read 12 of her books this year, and she was a new to me author, so that's pretty insane. But this book was my first one, and because of that, it just has a special place in my heart. I loved the way that I felt reading this book, and it had every single thing that I love in a romance. It is grumpy sunshine, it is boss assistant, it has a fun sunshiny heroine with a grumpy hero who's also really wealthy, which I tend to like in my heroes, and I just love this so much. It's actually book 2 in the Cottonwood Cove series, but I read it first and I think that's fine. But I would recommend the entire Cottonwood Cove series because I read all of it this year. This one is about Georgia, and she's part of the Reynolds family, and I love the Reynolds family so much. They have such amazing sibling relationships. They have this group chat that literally had me cackling out loud of how their interactions are. Their relationship with each other is just so freaking fun, and I wish I had a relationship like that with my siblings. But this book is Georgia. She is out of college and she is not really sure what she's doing with her life, but she gets a job as an assistant for the hero who owns this publishing company, and she loves books. She's a very bookish heroine, and she loves romance books, and so she's excited to work for this publishing company, and she is a serious sunshiny heroine, and she ends up in a romance with the boss, who is this very grumpy hero. And they have cute nicknames for each other. He calls her Tink and she calls him Boss Man, and it was just so cute. I loved it so much. It was just, I was like giddy reading it, and it just made me so happy and smiley, and I love the way that a book can do that. And so again, special place in my heart because it's the first one that I read by her, and it just stuck with me so much. I love it so much. It makes me so happy. The next one that I have is The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. This one, I really want this cover, and it hasn't come out yet. It's available for pre-order, so I haven't gotten it yet, but I loved this book so much. This is a best friend's brother romance, and it is a sports playing hero. The hero is a basketball star. The heroine in this one's name is Indy, and she has recently broken up with her cheating boyfriend, and she had been with this boyfriend for a very long time, and she is kind of lost now that she broke up with him, and she has no place to live. She has no savings. She is kind of shit out of luck, and her best friend Stevie asks Stevie's brother Ryan if Indy can live with him. Ryan has a guest room and he doesn't need the rent because he is a basketball star, and although he very much likes his privacy, he reluctantly agrees because he can't say no to his sister. And so Indy moves in with him, and it is a forced proximity roommates fake dating romance because Ryan has recently been named captain of his basketball team, but the coach is not so sure about whether that was the right move. Oh, I just didn't even mean to do that. That's the name of the book. The coach wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do, and so Ryan is trying to get in good with him, and he finds out that the best way to get in with the coach is to get in with the coach's wife, and so he fake dates Indy so that Indy can become friends with the coach's wife so that they can do couple things together. And Ryan is the epitome of a top tier book boyfriend. I am absolutely obsessed with him. I loved him so much. He's so spoony, and he is the kind of hero that I want as a boyfriend in real life. I was like dying over him and his sweetness, and he definitely likes things in its place. He likes his privacy. But I love the way that he's able to be himself with Indy, and I just loved this book so much, and I would highly recommend reading it. The second to last one that I have is Pucking Around by Emily Rath. Should be of no surprise that this ended up on my list. I am obsessed with this book. This is a Why Choose Hockey romance about a heroine named Rachel who is a sports doctor, and she gets a job at a hockey team called the Jacksonville Rays, and she moves down there and she ends up seeing this guy who she had a one-night stand with, that she connected so strongly with at this one-night stand, and then they left without exchanging names or anything, but she connected so strongly with him, and so she has this new job and finds out that that guy is on the team, and she ends up having a romance with him, his best friend, who's also the equipment manager, and another player on the team named Ilmari. And this book is long. It's long, but you get every single character's perspective. So you get all three heroes and the heroine's perspective in this book. You get their thoughts, you get their feelings, you get the development of the relationship so well. And the number one thing in this book that made me think it was so spectacular was the communication. As somebody who despises miscommunication and who thinks that it is so easy to communicate with your partner, I loved this book and the communication that they had. There are 4 people in this relationship, and this relationship was so much more believable to me than some of the other like MF books that I have read in my life, because they communicate about everything. They don't hide their feelings. They don't hide what they're thinking. They have this truth time in the kitchen where they stand and they say, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I want to happen, and this is how I think that we should do it. And they can agree, they can disagree, they can talk it out, and it makes the relationship so believable. And by the end of this book and their HEA, I was 100% on board with this relationship. I was like, this is a relationship that I actually think will last. This is a true, strong, developed relationship, and I loved that. I loved that. And I loved all of the characters. I love the grumpy, brooding Caleb, who's the equipment manager. I love the golden retriever energy of Jake, who is the hero she had the one-night stand with. And I love Ilmari. He's probably my favorite hero, but he is this Finnish giant who is considered very intimidating by people on the team, but he's actually such a sweetheart. And I love how all of them take to the relationship, and it's just so good, and I love it with my whole heart. And I would read like 10 more books just about these characters. I went and read the Pucking Ever After novellas, and I am not somebody who likes epilogue novellas. I sometimes don't even read the epilogues of my books, but I went and not only read the epilogue in this book, but I read both of the Pucking Ever After novellas because I wanted more from these characters. And I read book 2 in this series, which is an MF book that doesn't follow these characters, but I only really cared about these characters. I love them so much with my whole heart. I think that this is absolute perfection, and I just am obsessed with it. We're down to the final book, the last of my top 10, and it should be no surprise, but that is Reckless by Elsie Silver. I have been saying since I read this book that it was going to end up on my favorites of the year. I knew immediately that I loved this book so much. This one is about Winter and Theo. Theo is a bull rider, and he is the protege of the hero from book 1, who's also a bull rider, and the heroine in this one is the sister of the heroine from book 1, whose name was Summer, and this is Winter. Winter struggles with herself. She is really considered to be a bitchy, prickly heroine, and if you know me, you know that those are my favorite heroines. I love a prickly heroine. I love a heroine who so many other people think is bitchy, and you get to see her inner true self and why she is the way she is, and I love them. I love them so much. They always end up on my top 10 of the year. I had so many on my top favorites of last year that were all prickly heroines. It's just something that I truly connect with. I definitely come off bitchy sometimes, and I love seeing heroines and seeing their backstories and why they are the way they are. And Winter, I totally got. She and her childhood was definitely rough, and she's been through some hard stuff recently, and she ends up having a one-night stand with Theo, and she gets pregnant. and she tries to reach out to Theo, and in a communication error, she thinks that Theo doesn't want anything to do with the baby, with her, and so she goes and she has a baby and she raises it by herself. And it's, I think, like a year, maybe 2 later, when Theo comes back and he sees Winter and he sees his daughter, and he is like 100% all in, not only on his daughter, but also with Winter. He is the first person to come to Winter's defense. He is so, so sweet, and he is definitely like a lovable hero, and I love the way that he pairs with Winter, and I love the way that even to her like her sister, to the people that he considers his family, he stands up for her. And it just makes me so, so happy to have a hero who will do that for his heroine, for the mother of his child, and they form the most adorable little family. It is just the sweetest romance ever, and I love it. And I'm not a fan of surprise pregnancy romances, but I love this one so much. But that is it. That is the last one that I have for my top favorites of the year. I recommend all of these books so wholeheartedly, and I can't wait for the books that I'm going to read in 2024, but that's going to be it for this video. So like it if you liked it, subscribe, stick around, see more content from me. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books and how you feel about them, but please don't come into my comments and say you hate them. Please don't do that. But that is going to be it for this video, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have the absolute best day. Bye!